In the desert, something crazy just took place. Scientists used strong AI to look at a mountain in Saudi Arabia that was off limits. What they saw shocked and stunned them. Is this really the mountain where God met Moses? Keep watching, because the next part will really blow your mind. The Forbidden Mountain.
Israel is camped out there. Water comes from a rock. There's a lot of things that will happen at Mount Sinai.
There were fences, checkpoints, and quiet orders that kept people away from a piece of land in northwest Saudi Arabia for almost 50 years. Maps showed it as a blank area that no one could enter, not even locals. Soldiers watched over it and told travelers to go back. In nearby villages, people talked about a black mountain that lit up when lightning hit, a place where compasses spun and strange sounds came from the cliffs. No one outside the government knew why. The mountain Jabal al-Lawz was hidden in the silence. Many people now think this mountain might be the real Mount Sinai. The secret, which was meant to keep the place safe, turned out to be its best feature. Other Middle Eastern places were destroyed by thieves or changed by centuries of pilgrimage, but this one was left alone. Being alone stopped time. Wind still made the same marks in the rock that people in the past cut into it. People who took care of goats said there were pictures of cattle and circles of stones high on the hill, but almost no one saw them. In the desert, there was more than just sand and story. There was a landscape that had been sleeping peacefully, while people forgot it existed in the modern world. The first eyes to break the silence were not those of travelers or priests. They were put on top of American satellites. While the Cold War was going on, the Corona program looked in remote parts of the Arabian Peninsula for Soviet bases and mineral supplies. In the late 1970s, scientists saw something that didn't fit with the landscape: a dark cap on a mountain surrounded by pale rock and round clearings that didn't look like they would happen naturally. The pictures were kept in a vault, marked classified, and hidden for decades. Years later, when they were finally made public, scientists saw the same thing. Jabal al-Lawz stood out like a burn mark in a gold desert. From space, it was easy to see the changes. Most of the ridges in the area fairly reflected heat, but this one's peak absorbed it, leaving a thermal scar that can be seen in black and white film. The edges were strangely smooth, like the stone had melted and then cooled again. The top looked like it had been burned. At the base of the mountain, satellite images showed designs made of straight lines of stone that looked like camps or old walls. Erosion alone could not explain these features. People who looked at the pictures thought it looked like the scenery had been planned or remembered. As soon as the pictures went public, they got the attention of religious leaders and scientists who had been wondering for a long time if Mount Sinai was really in Egypt. The geography didn't match the trip that the Bible talks about in Exodus. Still, it was hard to get to the area. Saudi Arabia said the area was off limits for security reasons, and even requests from academics were turned down. The secret hung over the sand like a heat haze, easy to see but hard to reach. After many years, there was a change. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia opened up new areas for study and tourism as it started its Vision 2030 change plans. As the roads went deeper into Tabuk province, the planned Neem megacity crept towards the area that had been hidden from the rest of the world. This is one of the biggest building projects in the history of the world. The valleys that went to Jabal al-Lawz were shown on official maps for the first time. Just that one change was enough to get the scientists to come. Universities and private schools sent teams that worked quickly. Now, bulldozers, not thieves, were the bigger threat. They knew. The people who planned Neom said they would protect heritage, but survey crews could destroy proof in weeks if no one took a picture of it. Researchers with more sensors than shovels sought temporary visas in the geological or environmental categories. Their goal wasn't to dig, but to look around. Today's tools could see what was hidden in the rock without having to move a stone. They came with drones that had magnetometers, thermal imagers, and laser readers on board. The statistics looked odd from the first sweeps. Maps of elevation showed terraces and pathways that didn't match up with how water naturally drains. Hyperspectral imaging showed mineral changes around the summit that didn't match up with formations nearby. The land was changed by more than just the weather, according to all the measurements. Scientists realized they were measuring something that no one else had ever seen before, a mountain that had been hidden by its isolation, watched by spy satellites, and now shown to them by technology made to explore other worlds. The mountain had been waiting for a very long time. Finally, technology caught up, and the next thing it found shocked even experts. The scan begins.
When Moses goes up onto Mount Sinai, what are they doing down here?
The golden calf.
They're building a golden calf. Well, when you look at some of the inscriptions that you find on the rocks at the base of this mountain,
The mountain felt more like a secret than a place when the study team finally got to Jabal al-Lawz. It felt like the desert itself was holding its breath because the air was dry, thin, and quiet. Trucks came in with metal cases with flags from around the world on them. Inside were pieces of equipment from colleges, tech startups, and private labs on 4 continents. These spacecraft were directed at a mountain with a connection to one of humanity's oldest stories for the first time, instead of Mars or the Moon. The project had a simple name but a huge scope. Use all the latest scanning tools to make the first full AI-generated model of Jabal al-Lawz. The hills were mapped by LiDAR towers and pulses that could not be seen. This created a 3D model of the mountain in real time. In order to find chemical signatures below the surface, hyperspectral cameras looked at the rocks in hundreds of different light bands. As they flew over the sand, small seismic drones sent vibrations into the ground to make a picture of what was below. Satellites sent in more layers of radar and thermal readings from above. Not only was it a scan, but it was also computer digging without a single shovel. An AI engine that had been trained on hundreds of datasets was at the heart of the project. These datasets included old Corona Spy satellite archives from the 1970s, new NASA terrain grids, hydrological charts, and even biblical route estimates from old travel records. The only question that needed to be answered was whether or not an algorithm could follow the trip described in Exodus and find out where it really ended up. Every line of code was made to compare faith to facts, like how far someone had to walk, the shape of the desert, and their ability to get water. Over 3 million terrain points were processed across the Arabian Peninsula. Changes in slope, wind erosion, and underground density were all plotted. With each new layer of data, the probability ranges got smaller and smaller until all of the models led to the same peak, Jabal al-Lawz. Then the more in-depth study began. The AI used hydrological maps to find weak signs of dried riverbeds that went out from the base of the mountain. At the points where these patterns met, travelers had long known it as the Split Rock of Horeb. The data showed that waterways split off from that spot, and their tracks are now fossilized in the sand. Heavy flow was thought to have happened thousands of years ago, which is much too big to be caused by regular rain. A rock feature was linked to one of the most famous events in the Hebrew Bible, Moses striking the rock to get water in the desert. But the most amazing find was made at the top. The hyperspectral scans showed a mineral signature that was very different from what was found in the area. About 30 centimeters deep, the top layer was made up of fused silicates, which is stone that has been fired to over 2,000 degrees Celsius. This strange thing was only seen at the very top of Jabal al-Lawz in the whole range. The team's geologists looked at the data and compared it to maps of volcanoes. They found no records of past explosions within hundreds of kilometers. It wasn't volcanic rock, it was something else. When the first thermal render came up on the screen, the slopes were cool and the peak was bright red. The mountain as a whole looked fine. The top only caught fire. As the next set of instruments ran, numbers came in that made even the most experienced scientists nervous. The magnetometer started to show a spike near the spot where the darkened stone had been found. The readings changed a lot, which is not what the area geology should show. When compasses were brought to the spot, they moved around randomly and would point east when they should have pointed north. Drones that got too close to the top lost their signal for a short time and then came back with messed up flight logs. There was interference that no one could understand, but the data kept showing the same pattern over and over. The AI visualization was changed one last time, adding geological, thermal, and magnetic data to make a new map. The result was scary. A dense heat scar exactly centered at the top, surrounded by electromagnetic field distortions that were all the same size. The picture looked like a pulse that had been frozen in stone, as if the mountain had caught an explosion of energy many years ago. The monitors in the control room lit up in the dim light of dawn. The team went over their tools once more, calibrated them, and did some extra tests. The numbers didn't change. It wasn't a trick of light that the top was black. That wasn't basalt. The information suggested that the stone had been vitrified, which means it had been heated to a level that was much higher than any natural source in the area. It was proven by every instrument. Nothing, not even a storm or a lightning strike, could explain the pattern or the depth of the union. Numbers didn't make things clear for them for the first time in their lives. Instead, they made things stranger. The exact and emotionless facts talked about something that shouldn't be there. The tools did not have any beliefs, biases, or plans, but what they wrote matched a story from a very long time ago about a rock that burned from the top down. A program, not a prophet or priest, had talked about fire from heaven for the first time. What was waiting below the surface was going to make them question everything they thought they knew. The evidence on the ground. As soon as the data stopped streaming and the dust settled, the scientists got out of the control tents and started climbing the burned hill. After seeing the lines on the satellite maps and AI models, it was time to touch the proof for real. The numbers had only given them a hint of what they would find on the ground. The team set up their first field station at the top on a thin layer of stone that sparkled in the sun. Samples were taken from rock on the surface, pieces of rock below the surface, and nearby hills that had not been damaged so that they could be compared. The change was clear right away. The top pieces looked like glass when looked at through a microscope. This is because the grains had fused together in a process called vitrification. For that kind of melting to happen, temperatures are needed that are only usually seen in natural disasters or volcanic eruptions. However, this mountain was neither a volcano nor a hill. Geologists disagreed about what caused the crater. A lightning storm couldn't have caused such broad heat, and a meteor would have left a clear crater. One thing stayed the same. Something had burned the mountain from the top down. Further down, the group followed the path that the AI's hydrology models had pointed out. It led them to a huge rock feature that stood tall above the plain. The split rock of Horeb was more than just a site. It was also a strange natural formation. It was 12 meters tall and had a cut right through the middle, making it look like a broken memorial. Deep weathering marks and mineral stains on the base showed that water had been moving over it. The team used scanners on drones to run a simulation. The results showed that liquid had indeed rushed through the split thousands of years ago, leaving behind the telltale channels that now look like rust veins. The design wasn't random. It looked like how water under pressure would leak out of an aquifer that is cracked. The model almost exactly matched the story of Exodus. A rock was hit, water came out, and the desert came to life for a short time. There were more signs at the base of the mountain. Scenes of animals and people were carved into flat pieces of stone. The petroglyphs looked pale next to the sunburned rock. Some seemed to show animals standing on raised platforms, while others showed people raising their hands in a way that looked strangely like they were worshiping. The remains of a stone foundation were close by. It was made up of 12 circular bases grouped in a half arc. Photogrammetry proved that they were straight and symmetrical. The researchers thought it looked less like a bunch of random ruins and more like the form of an altar. Later, there were arguments in the labs about the dates. Some said they came from the late Bronze Age, while others said they were much later. But no one could argue with how well the carvings were done or how each picture told the story of the golden calf. Then, there were the marks that shouldn't have been there at all. Near the base of the ridge, letters were barely carved into rocks. The letters were sharp, angle-shaped, and old. Linguists looking at photos noticed similarities to Paleo-Hebrew, an early Semitic language that was used around the time that the Exodus is thought to have happened. Few and worn, the glyphs had a design that suggested they were meant to be there. Still, it was almost hard to be sure. People still couldn't get into the area easily, and Saudi officials wouldn't let anyone do any public digging. The writings were only seen in photos for now, stuck between being found and being doubted. The most unusual signs, though, weren't in what they saw, but in what their tools did. As the team got closer to the top, the GPS units started to act up and lose track of their location by hundreds of meters. Drones flying above lost their signal and went off path before they could get back on track. Magnetometers started to spin randomly and then stopped working. Geologists later thought that the heart of the mountain might have magnetite veins, which is a mineral that can mess up instruments, but the readings were too strong to be easily explained away. The magnetic field moved, pulsed and almost seemed to respond. The conflict of truth. The finds didn't stay in the desert for very long. In just a few days, clips of the AI scans and drone video were on TikTok and YouTube. Each picture, the burned peak, the broken rock, and the strange carvings, got millions of views. Some people saw it as proof of the Exodus, while others saw it as digital myth-making. In the comments area, there was a fight between faith and science, with believers using scripture to argue against academics who wanted data. What began as a quiet research trip turned into a public debate around the world. In Saudi Arabia, the government had a problem. The area that wasn't allowed before was now the center of a tourist boom. However, too much attention could hurt everything they were making. Just a few miles away, the $500 billion Neom megacity with its glass towers and smart roads was taking shape. With just a hint that the ground below it held the real Mount Sinai, a construction site could overnight become a place where people come to pray. It was risky for the government to try to balance religious identity, foreign investment, and political control there. Ministries talked about their choices in private meetings. Let some study happen and bring in tourists, or shut down the area again before things got out of hand. Archaeological permits were halted, and teams from other countries were told to send their raw data for review. The technology that had helped solve the puzzle was now being used to keep an eye on it. The response was just a split outside of Saudi Arabia. Universities in the West asked for studies to be reviewed by other experts so that the results could be checked before they were labeled as biblical truth. Well-known archaeologists said that the AI results were just guesses and warned that sensationalism could hurt real study. Others, though, said that ignoring the data without looking it over was cocky and showed that academics were afraid of anything that could change the past. Money made everything harder. Investors in Neom wanted the work to go ahead without any problems, but heritage groups around the world wanted the building to be stopped. Religious groups offered to pay for separate digs, but environmental groups warned of damage that could not be fixed. With each new word, the story became less about science and more about ideas. The hardest question was who owned the finding. Private researchers had collected the data in Saudi Arabia. It was then processed on computers in other countries and shared across networks around the world. Each side said they had the power to choose what would be revealed. There was more to the truth than just proof. It was an advantage. When the study site was closed down and the servers were supervised by the government, one thing was clear: the truth had become a political tool, and the servers that stored it were being watched. The deeper mystery. New theories started to come up as the arguments got worse. Each one tried to explain what the AI had seen. Without using magical ideas, scientists and historians came up with the first one. They called it the hydraulic engineering theory. They thought that Moses might have learnt old ways to find water underground while working in the royal courts of Egypt. Egypt's engineers were very good at watering plants long before the Israelites left. They could read the land, the wind, and the cracks in the rock to find springs. This idea says that the miracle at Split Rock might have been a moment of science dressed up as faith, with a leader hitting the right crack to free a spring that was under a lot of pressure. What looked divine could have been a lot of skill, knowledge, and timing that were way ahead of their time. This second idea went up towards the sky. Scientists who are studying the mountain's strange magnetic field think that the fire on Sinai might have been natural plasma, which is a huge electromagnetic discharge caused by the minerals that make up the mountain. Magnetite and quartz can store and release static electricity in violent bursts under certain conditions, making loud roaring sounds and flashes of light. From below, people in the Bronze Age would have thought it looked like the sky was opening up. Lightning storms and plasma arcs could be the reason why the peak turned into a glassy block. Compasses stopped working, and the mountain looked like it was on fire without actually burning up. Next came the idea of the continuum of holy sites. Archaeologists have noticed that some landscapes, like mountains that are lined up with stars or valleys that reverberate with water or magnetism, seem to be sacred to people from all times and countries. It's possible that many travelers had been drawn to Jabal al-Lawz before Moses, each noticing something strange about it. The writings and altars may not be from just one faith, but from many, built up over time like pages in a story that everyone knows. If this discovery shook you as much as it did the scientists, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more mysteries revealed by modern technology. And don't forget to click the next video popping up on your screen.